So as we get into episode 15, we start off with the crew arriving in the new village. And as they would enter the village, they would come across the strangest thing. All of the villagers would be all asleep. After being initially shocked, Sign and Fearing would come to the conclusion that this is a curse. Fearing would then go and explain what a curse is. She would say it's a spell casted by demons. And in this particular case, the demons are using a spell to put humans to sleep. She would continue to say that these curses can't be solved by humankind's magic. It's impossible. Stark would then say, well, then it's over for this village. We can't help them. Frieren would say, no, we can help them. But the magic we have to use is one of the goddess, a special magic used by priests. And as we move along, Frieren would ask Sign, hey, could you save the villagers? He would say, give him a little time. He needs to study the curse and see where it derives from. Continuing along, Frieren would then explain to Stark the difference between every other magic and the magic of the goddess. She would tell Stark the difference is the magic of the goddess uses scriptures sort of like a Bible, and only the owners of these scriptures can use them. She would continue to say, using the magic of the goddess is very hard to do. It's very complicated and they don't understand it. She would continue and say, only those with a knack for it could really use it. Fearing explains more that the church usually handles these curses, and the priests are very strong against them. And with that said, Sign takes over the job. He says he knows where the curse is coming from. It's from a monster, and he knows the location. He says instead of him doing the ritual, he'll just attack the monster head on. That'll be quicker. And so as we move along, Sign looks to take out the monster. But before then, bad news would happen, because Stark will fall victim to the curse and fall asleep. And what's even worse, Sign tells them that with his current abilities, he could only awake anybody who fall from the spell up for 5 seconds. After finding this out, we will move on to the next scene. And as the crew hunt down this monster, each one of the crew members would eventually fall asleep. Fern and then Frieren would finally fall asleep. But before Frieren dies, she tells Sign, wake me up. Even if it's for 5 seconds, I'll defeat the monster. Sign would panic and say, wait, how are we going to defeat it in 5 seconds? You can tell he's shook, but he doesn't have much time to think, because as soon as he says this, the monster would arrive. And so we get right into action. As this monster plan attacks him, he would come up with a plan, and that would be to take out his heart. And with that said, that's exactly what he would do. Sign would then use the magic of the goddess and let off a powerful attack headed towards the monster. But the attack wouldn't connect because the monster would deflect it. Sign then reacts and says, wait, if I don't get a hit directly to his core, the monster's leaves could deflect the attacks towards people around me, causing them harm. Knowing the bad that could happen, he would think to himself, what do I do next? He says, do I wake up Fearing? Will she be able to kill the monster in just 5 seconds? He then starts to worry even more and say, even if I wake her up, we don't know each other that well. How am I going to tell her in so little amount of time how to kill the monster? In that moment of doubt, suddenly he goes into a flashback of when he was younger talking to Heater the priest. Heater the priest would talk to him and tell him he don't even understand Fearing. But in so many words, he would say, just trust her. Suddenly the flashback would end and he would know what to do. He says, I'll just trust Frieren. And in the next moment, he uses his awakening ability. Frieren then awakes, and without any hesitation, she lets off a crazy attack, destroying his core. The monster would be defeated. And just like that, Frieren does it again. Soon we would move along. They would leave the village, and after getting thanks from everybody, they would continue their journey. They would arrive at Vorik, and this would be a special spot in their journey, because this place marks the halfway spot between them and their final destination. After realizing this, we would move along. The crew would look to resupply at Vorik, but there would be one problem. They would be out of money. And as they're wondering what they're going to do, the craziest thing happened. The Lord of Vorik stops Stark, and he has a job for him. They would all be shocked. Soon after, they would go back to his mansion and discuss this job that he has for Stark. And what the job is insane. The Lord sees Stark and he sees he looks similar to his son. And after he explains to him the lore of how his son died at war, he asks Stark to act as his son because he don't want his village to be low on morale after we find out how much of a hero he was to this village. And so after he gets all the information about the job, Stark actually agrees to it. Later, the Lord would tell Stark that there would be a famous party in 3 months, and he wants Stark to be there and act as his son. He also added that Stark has to take etiquette classes. After getting all the information, Stark would begin his training. The anime would highlight him learning etiquette and how brutal it is for him. But as time goes by, he would eventually get good at it. And so as we move along, we would go to the scene of him and Lord Orden. Stark would be weirded out how he could let somebody play his son that just died. The Lord would explain to him this is what his son wanted, so he has no regrets about doing this. Soon after, we'll move on in the scene, and we will see the Lord of the village has a younger son. And to me, this younger son reminds Stark of himself when he was young. And as Stark watches this young boy swing this wooden sword, practicing his skills, he would ask the Lord, "What do you think of him?" He says he's not as strong as my eldest son, but he's a hard worker. And he actually says, and if he keeps trying hard, he thinks he'll become a great knight. I believe Stark was touched by this little moment because when he was younger, he didn't get that same treatment from his dad. So after this wholesome moment, we move to the ending of the anime. But it'd be my favorite because we would find out that Fern has to learn etiquette too because she would be Stark's date. This would shock her like crazy, but she would eventually learn all the etiquette she needs to. And as we end the anime, we arrive at the big party. And at this party, everybody would be amazed because Stark and Fern would have a beautiful ballroom dancing moment. And as they danced the night away, they showed a beautiful chemistry they would have together. This scene was truly amazing. But as we end the anime, the job would be done and the party would end. And as we land on the last scene, the Lord of the village asked Stark, could he replace his son for good? Stark would decline. Stark would say, I have a journey to go on. And not only that, I have to come back and tell my master of all the great stories that I've been through. And just like that, the anime would end.